What are you famous for, RJ? Give me something to give to the crowd here.
The longest drift on the Copper River Flats. 2 days.
The longest trip on the Copper River Flats. A 2-day drift. He must have broke down and wound up at Montague or Kodiak or somewhere. Okay, so this is RJ Kopchak, longtime Cordova fisherman, and major bullshitter too. Maybe I'll just, is this thing working? There we go. Maybe I'll just use Dennis's poems here, which is great. You guys all know the difference, of course, between a nursery rhyme and a sea story. One starts out exactly, once upon a time. The other starts out, this ain't no shit. Before we get going a little bit, we're here for the fishing industry, in one sense, part of that big family. And one of the phenomena we're all seeing is this incredible recovery of salmon populations in the Pacific Northwest. And we're thinking, wow, isn't this great? Yeah. And what the heck's going on? Because we certainly know it's not habitat. And so since that's not the case, it's the ocean. And we all know the world is changing incredibly quickly right now. One of the things that might be happening is with this incredible change in the way glacier mass is going away. We're releasing massive amounts of iron into the atmosphere. That dust goes out to the ocean. It is, of course, the trigger that makes all of the magic happen in the ocean. It's what makes plankton bloom and all of those little critters get fat quick. And I think we may be the winners for a while, so hip hip hooray, that's good for us. Now the longer story is, let's get the habitat back in shape and figure out how to deal with the changes that are forcing this bounty in the Pacific Northwest. So anyway, that little perspective aside, just another quick one, because I come from this fishery that's phenomenal. Where I'm at, Alaska fishermen landed about 5.3 billion pounds of seafood, and this is an incredible perspective, $1.9 billion in value, and it's more than all of the 15 East Coast states combined, and more than half of the volume caught by all of the United States. And about number 14 in the world if Alaska was a country. And it's a phenomenon, and it's amazing. So we're feeling pretty smug there and kind of our happy fishermen. So mostly I write about storms, because the fishing's good, so I'm not whining about not catching fish. I'm going to do a couple of storm stories here for you. This ain't no shit. All right, this is called Crossing Strawberry with Buck. And there's a fog bank just outside of me and a fog bank just within. If this old boat don't get me home, I swear to God I'll swim. She's listing some to starboard and the bilge pump seems too slow. The swells come up, the bar looks bad, the wind's begun to blow. But the fish are cold within her hold and the gear's tied down on deck. But if I don't catch this tide across, I'll likely ground and wreck. Because the sandbars seem to all have moved and the channels changed her course. I gotta break her off my stern, but I think that I've seen worse. There's just static on the radio. Buck's the only one around, and I'm halfway through the bar right now, but I've almost run aground. There's another 100 yards to calm, and the inside waters call. The engine's hot, the tanks are low. I pray that she don't stall. And now that big one in the set, it towers just behind, and my stern goes up, and the bow plows in, and I almost lose my mind because there's water everywhere. The deck, it's all a slosh. The hatch afloat, the scupper's full, the stern is half awash. But now I'm in the channel and the water's calm, and it's all marked out ahead. Another hour, maybe two, and I'll be home in bed. Crossing the bar with Buck. So a long time ago, there was a phenomenal experiment in Prince William Sound, and it was called the Copper River Fishermen's Cooperative. It was there's some founders here and some folks that were preeminent in helping it work for the time it did. Unfortunately bankrupted by the events in 1989 from the oil spill. Up until that time, that organization changed the course of fishing industry quality in the state of Alaska. The first to bleed, the first to ice, the first to guarantee quality through the market chain. A pretty cool thing. A couple of the guys that helped us get going were these Czechoslovakian expatriates, came over as soccer players with that team, and sometimes in the late 70s, late 60s, early 70s, Tony and Vince Baron. They kind of got away from that life, if you know what I mean. Stayed in America when they defected and became fishermen out of Cordova. This is a story about Tony, Vince, and me. We left the anchorage at slack tide. The bar was huge with swell. They stood on end, crested large, no place to pause and dwell. There are two boats just ahead of me and two I just saw aft. They seem to be the cautious type, the shy and timid craft. Vince and Tony, they timed it just right. They cleared the brakes just now. They're behind that massive wall of water that's heading toward my bow. And the two boats just behind me have turned to scurry home. The swells have turned to breakers, to walls of churning foam. And I push the throttle forward. The smoke hole notches some, and the bow goes up and up and up and then over. And I'm glad that that is done. So now it's Tony, Vince, and me. Keep nosing out the bar because the tide is turned and the swell is up. And there's breakers near and far. We tried to turn around just once. There was no way to get back in, so we head to deeper water. It's that or sink and swim. Well, at least it's June. There's lots of light. The net's a great sea anchor, so we make deep water, set out our gear, clean up the boat, then thank her. And there's only one safe place to be, secure within the bunk, while swells break steadily across the bow, and the air is filled with foam and junk. And about 5 hours later, when the wind and swell die down, I check my net and wonder at all the fish I found. At least 800 big fat reds are tangled in my web, and I pick for hours and sell the fish and head home to bed. And as for Vince and Tony, they caught more fish than me and have the same sea story to share with friends they see. That's Tony, Vince, and me. Okay, it is about catching fish, isn't it? But the bottom line is I'm catching fish there. I had to brag. It was a nice day. All right. If you don't know where Cordova, Alaska is, Alaska looks like this, right? The map of the state of Alaska. The farthest place north, ooh, we can do it in shadows. Right there, see that? The farthest place north, right there, is a place called Point Bennick. That's about 7 miles from Cordova, Alaska. We're on Orca Inlet, which is a little inlet into Prince William Sound. It's some of the world's richest waters when you look at how productive that north end of the Gulf is. And what happens there feeds the fish in that entire end of the ocean. It's a magic place. It also, because it's the highest coastal mountain range in the world, it is where the wind turns left. And it's known sometimes as Coffin Corner. This is a poem called The Head of the Beast. Well, the winds come up and the swell has too, and it's time to leave for the sake of the crew. To head for the bar, set a course straight east. It's the best spot to anchor, but toward the head of the beast. Deep gray clouds that roll and boil pour over Kayak Island like a snake uncoiled. And the hiss of the wind is like an adder's breath. The similar promise, a slow, cold death. And you keep pounding on, though, through the surf and the swell, toward the one safe haven from this breath from hell. Mariners know, and most would say, hell's a flameless place with freezing spray where there's holes in your boots and the rain gear leaks and there's froth blowing off of the cresting peaks. The 50-foot swells that have no end. Hell's no place we want to spend any more time than we already have. So we keep pounding on, though you can't see a thing, past the rocks, through the surf, and the spray and the sting. Because you know, in an hour, if all goes right, and the boat holds together through the dark of the night, and the bilge pump keeps working, and the motor don't quit, you'll slide past the rocks up behind the spit, where you'll find calm water Get the anchor down till the wind quits blowing and you head to town. That's the beast. Growing up, I saw Dean Martin do this all the time. Excellent beverage. A lubricant, totally necessary. Oh, I just did this one. Okay, we'll do a different one. All right, this one's like heading towards the place that I'm heading towards, and we all head towards. This is a story about a place called Barney's Hole. Oh yeah, guys, you know it all. I got buddies here who have spent these nights there. Well, it's across the flats, high water slack. Left at Lemisher and don't turn back. It's a quarter mile and maybe more. There's a wall of sand starts right at shore, and the hole is deep and the tide runs slow. It's the best place here to ride a blow. I've been in that place when the wind was really screaming. The smokestack howled, antennas wailed, the high-pitched song of a southeast gale, and each antenna sang its own high note. The VHFA, the CBC, and the sideband G before it broke. And you could clearly hear the anchor line strain while the hard wind howled like a dog in pain. And you're up all night instead of dreaming. Salt spray pounds glass, the short slap of chop makes you wish it were light, the wind would stop. But you know that less than a mile away there's 40-foot seas and hell to pay. And gusts to 100 and maybe more. Thank God you're here right next to shore. Tucked up close, but scared, in Barney's Hole. Well, it's somewhat safe. There's some friends around, some at anchor and some who've run up to ground. In high water, it's just about a 3. When the wind picks up and next to me, I see John's boat go sliding past. His hook is drug, it did not hold fast. And his drill is one we've all done before. Start the engine, grab the anchor, home, and there's more. Steer north when you do get underway and stay out of the breakers where there's hell to pay. And if it all works out, you save your soul and make your way back to Barney's Hole. How am I doing on time there, Coach? You got one? All right. Well, catch me later for Wingham Island Blow. That follows up where we left off at Barney's. But I do want to close this with a poem that really is about the lifestyle that a great many of us have chosen and a great many of you are curious about. It was written in memory of a good friend of mine who was lost actually during that crazy tsunami years ago that happened in the Far East. He was the only U.S. citizen killed during that tragedy, and a Cordova fisherman. I wrote this for his wake and have used it at several others and share it with you. It's called The Fishing Life. The fishing life is funny. It never is the same. There's days of calm and friendly seas and storms that kill and maim. But the fishing life, it's what I need to sit within my boat and dream and cast my dreams into the sea to see what she will give to me. And when it's time to pull the net and pick that last and final set, I'll think back of all it's meant to me, the storms and calm and friendly seas. And when I pull the anchor line and haul the hook one final time to join all those who went before forever fishing just offshore, I'll think back on all its cost, of all the friends that I have lost, of that elusive magic set and all the fish I've tried to get. And I'll set my course for that great port, God's sheltered bay, our last resort. And I'll count my fish one final time and then lie to all the friends I find. And I expect I'll find a few that'll be smoking rope and drinking brew and bait hooks and miniments and stacking thoughts with few regrets. We all took that chance, we placed our bets. We lived our lives with few regrets, a finer life you'll never find. and soaking nets and casting lines and stacking pots and bait hooks. Thank you all. I love Fisher Poet. I like being part of this brother and sisterhood. So thanks